In this short video, I'm gonna show you how to create the perfect long form video content for you and your business, how to secure yourself as the go-to expert, and how to grow revenue with content, and also how to create content that can be repurposed into short clips and other pieces of content for social media. Let's do this. Don't forget that what we're talking about here is just one part of a larger series on how to build your sales generating content production system. We're gonna be covering the content creation framework piece here, but I'm also coming up with videos on the post-production process, the distribution process, and how to gather audience insights so you can improve your content creation process and gain momentum quickly over time. So if you want awesome content like that, make sure to like and subscribe. So let's get into it. How do we create the perfect piece of long form content for you and your business? The way I help my clients think about it is through a content creation framework. And I came up with this because most people are defaulting to video podcasts. And while video podcasts are a great way to create long form video content, it's not for everyone. You could create a live Q&A, you could do other recorded events, you could put on a live show, you could do a documentary, you could just have someone prepare some interview questions for you and just hit you with those rapid fire. You could just be sitting there on camera, the questions are coming at you and you're just answering them and recording them, and then you can take that, make a long form video out of it, and then also cut that up into social media clips that you can push onto TikTok, onto LinkedIn, onto Instagram Reels. And of course, there's the trusted webinar that's been around forever. You can record those and make content out of that and also make social media clips as well. So with all that, how do you decide what you're gonna do for yourself? What I walk my clients through is the key considerations. First and foremost, you're gonna wanna think about the networking effect. How does this long form content introduce you to new customers, new partners, influencers, and then help you build community? Obviously, a podcast can really do all of those. You could reach out to new customers to have as a guest on your show. You could reach out to partners, have them on your show and build relationships there. You could invite on other influencers and then give them clips in the show after the fact to help them promote you, themselves, and your podcast. And all along the way, if you're inviting all these different types of people, you're building community around you and your business and your podcast. Another key consideration is, can you get live questions from the audience? So a podcast is typically a recorded event where you're talking to another expert, maybe 2 or 3, but you're not usually answering questions from a live audience. And questions from a live audience are great because they're actually things that are top of mind to the people you really want to serve. But if you're thinking creatively about it, you could definitely do a live Q&A, and then you could simply publish that audio and video as a video podcast. A video podcast does not have to be an interview. I really like to tell people to expand their mind on what these different pieces of content can actually be. There's so many things that we see other people doing that it might actually limit what you think you can do. The most important thing you should think about is these key considerations. A live show is also a great way to get live questions from the audience. And again, getting these live questions from the audience is important because these are top of mind. If you start a podcast and just bring on other influencers, you might not be getting relevant questions from your audience. The other thing you need to think about when you're starting some long form content is, what is your ability to repurpose that content going to be? Sometimes people start video podcasts and they bring on other influencers and interview them, and then they find that a large majority of the conversation is someone else talking. And so your ability to repurpose that content and get clips of you talking and sharing your expertise is going to be limited. Now, of course, if you think about this ahead of time, you can make sure when you do that podcast and when you have on influencers, you make sure that you are doing it and setting it up in such a way that it's a casual conversation where both of you are going to be doing the majority of the talking. The other thing you want to think about too is the effort it takes to prepare and plan this long form content. Podcasts can be pretty easy because you're just inviting people on to have a good conversation. You might want to come up with the questions and you're going to have to think about inviting those different guests, but you don't have to plan out a huge event like you would on a webinar or preparing pre-made questions. Preparing a webinar is no easy task, and if you're doing this on a weekly basis, this is something that's going to take some time. Having said that, webinars can be great because it's very directed, specific information. And if people need that information, they can be very compelling. It's also hard to come up with pre-made questions on a weekly basis. You're gonna find yourself coming up with the same questions over and over again, and it's gonna take a little bit of creativity to always come up with new questions. Documentaries can be quite easy in terms of planning because you're just documenting what's happening, but the post-production side of things might be a little bit more difficult because you're gonna be pumping out a lot of video and somebody's gonna have to go through all that video and pull out out the pieces that are meaningful. A live show can be easy or hard depending on what you're going to be presenting in that content. You could start off a live show with a 5-minute presentation, and then you could branch into live Q&A. So make sure you think about the effort that it takes to prepare and plan that long form content. Then you're also going to want to think about the recording frequency. How often are you going to do this? I tell people it's usually best to start off with something manageable, and then once you get into the groove, then you can always do more. But it can be a little frustrating when you bite off more than you can chew, and then you start missing different events. One thing I will also say about live events is that they hold you accountable to create the content. Sometimes it's very easy to start a video podcast and then you start canceling interviews, or maybe someone cancels on you. Live events will hold you accountable because there's going to be an audience showing up to see you, and it's going to force you to put on your show. And just as a reminder, we are trying to build a system here. We're trying to make a scalable system. So when you are creating your content, you want to define these different things so that you can do this on a repeatable, easy way. What is that recording concept? We just talked about that. Is it a video podcast, a live Q&A? What is it? What is your point of view? What will be discussed on a regular basis? Make sure you have all that recording equipment set up and easy to use, so you just turn on a button and you can just record. Make sure you've mapped out how you're going to repurpose this content. You don't want to be going into the post-production process each week reinventing the wheel. Are you going to create clips? Are you going to create images? What are you going to create? Document that repurposing workflow. And again, in future videos, I do go over that entire process. Make sure you map out a pre-planning process. What is it you need to do before every single one of these events? What are the recording guidelines? What are the general themes? How are people going to be positioned around a table or a desk? Make sure you've got a recording checklist so you can go through that every time and make sure everything is done correctly. And then make sure you've got a recording notes or a script that you can fill out each time that makes it easy for you to put this show on. And then you're going to also want to think about what is a common CTA that I'm going to use when I'm publishing this content so I can tell people to take some form of action either at the end of the show. It could be to like or subscribe to the podcast. It could be to go check out your website. It could be to go download another resource. Whatever it is, you're going to want to develop what that common CTA is so that you can grow your show, your business, or whatever it is you're trying to grow. So there it is. Use this content creation framework and these key considerations to decide what type of content you're going to create, and then make sure you define these common elements so that you can build your sales generating content production system to efficiently create, repurpose, and distribute content at scale without losing your mind. And as always, if you found this content valuable, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. That helps me out a lot. I would appreciate it, and I will see you on the next video.